When a trial court judge retires, there are lots of stories to be told and things to reminisce about. I'll talk with retired Judge Fred Fox right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
Judge Fred Fox has recently retired from the bench and has agreed to share his thoughts after 40 years as a judge. My guest is the Honorable Fred L. Fox II. Judge Fox, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
40 years as a judge, and time as a lawyer before that and other things. When did you first decide you wanted to become a lawyer?
Well, there's a funny story to that. My grandfather was a lawyer and was a state senator, state tax commissioner, and a Supreme Court justice. And my father was a lawyer and was prosecuting attorney in Braxton County for 12 years. And when I got out of high school and started to college, the only thing I was sure about was that I was not going to be a lawyer. I've graduated from college, went into the Marine Corps, spent 3.5 years in the Marine Corps, and decided that being a lawyer didn't sound like such a bad idea. And so I came back and went to law school.
After being a Marine, a lawyer looked like an attractive job.
Exactly.
So you went to law school, and what was the first thing you did when you got out of law school?
First thing I did was went to work for a law firm in Fairmont, Furby, Amos, Webb, and Critchfield. I went to work for Russell Furby, who was my mentor, and promised me when he interviewed me that I wouldn't get stuck in the record room my entire first couple of years, and he was true to his promise. He took me to trial with him, and so I actually got trial experience from the very beginning.
Where did that go?
Basically, most of it was defense work in civil cases. I had some criminal appointments, but the majority of it was civil work.
Most young lawyers, when they're getting started, end up doing some criminal work, usually on court-appointed cases that there's very little money involved in it, but you get a lot of experience.
I did my share of that, and incidentally, I have a son who is 47 now, and when he left home to go to WVU, his last words to me were, "I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be a lawyer," and he's been a lawyer for the last 20 years. So the Foxes have 4 generations of lawyers, and I have a daughter who's a freshman at Shepherd College who says she's going to law school too.
Well, she's supposed to not want to go to law school.
She said since she was in high school she wanted to go to law school.
What period of time were you talking about when you got out of law school and you practiced law?
I graduated from law school in 1967, and went to work for the law firm in the summer of 1967, and then went back in the Marine Corps.
Okay. Being a lawyer looked like a good deal as opposed to being an active duty Marine until you were a lawyer. Then the Marine Corps beckoned again?
Yes, and it wasn't that the Marine Corps looked attractive to me. I looked attractive to the Marine Corps.
Tell us about that.
And I had stayed in the Marine Corps Reserves through law school because I had a family, and it paid well to stay in the reserves. And between that and the GI Bill and a job, I graduated from law school without owing anybody any money.
It was possible to do that.
It was
in
possible
those days.
to do that then, yes, it was. I then got a telegram from the Marine Corps saying basically since I was in the active reserves, I was subject to what's called a SWAG, which is an 18-month callback, and that my name was on a list being considered.
For the benefit of our younger viewers who don't remember the late 1960s, this was pretty much the height of the Vietnam War.
It was the height, it was.
And you were an infantry Marine.
Yes.
And so they were looking for people to bring back.
They were looking for people to bring back, and by virtue of staying in the reserves, I put myself on sort of on the top of the list. Although there was an appeal process. You could appeal if you wanted to, but I basically decided that I wouldn't appeal, and I did that because a real good friend of mine was in the Marine Corps at that time, attached to an R&R unit, or attached to a reserve unit, and he was spending most of his time making casualty calls, and that's when you go out to families and tell them that their sons or daughters have been wounded or have been killed. And so when I got the telegram from the Marine Corps, I sent them back a telegram and told them that I would waive my appeal if, one, I could go back into the Marine Corps in the infantry, which is as opposed to JAG.
JAG is Judge Advocate General.
Judge Advocate General. And secondly, if I could go to Vietnam.
So you didn't ask to be allowed to come in as a lawyer, even though you were one.
Right.
You wanted to be a combat Marine.
I wanted to be a combat Marine because I'd had, by that time, 7-8 years of training.
And that was the right thing to do.
And it was the right thing to do, and I think a lot of men sort of have that feeling.
Not all of them, but you did.
No, not all of them.
But you did. So what happened when you went back in?
I had a rifle company. It was probably the most memorable and rewarding 11 months of my life. I was, after I'd been there 11 months, I was wounded and then spent almost a year in a naval hospital, in several naval hospitals, but I ended up in Portsmouth, Virginia.
Let's talk a little bit about your time in Vietnam. You won 2 Bronze Stars.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The 1 Bronze Star I won when my company basically took a hill that the Marine Corps had been trying to take for about 4 different days with 4 different companies, and I when they called, I was Kilo Company. When they called Kilo Company, I went way forward of the lines and called in airstrikes and directed airstrikes on the hill, and actually was close enough to where when the napalm goes off, it sort of takes all the oxygen out of the air, and I was having trouble breathing and so forth. But I called in airstrikes the night before, and we went up the next morning and met some resistance, but very little. Took the hill, and I got the Bronze Star.
And you won another one.
The other one was when I was wounded. Right after I got wounded, and it was either a booby trap or a mortar round, and nobody really knows for sure. And I think the doctors think I was shot in the foot, although they couldn't tell for sure if it was a bullet or a piece of shrapnel. But after that, we were attacked by the group, by some VC who we'd been chasing.
Viet Cong.
Viet Cong. And I, my radio man, who was kneeling beside me when the booby trap went off, was killed. And I got the radio and again was calling in fire almost virtually on top of our position because we were almost to the point of being overrun, and we were able to stop them, and I got a Bronze Star for that.
I talked about winning Bronze Stars. You don't win them, they're awarded to you.
Right.
It's not a lottery, it's what you do.
Right.
And you were awarded a Purple Heart also.
Purple Heart you get for shedding blood, and I shed some blood.
After all that, I would think practicing law would be somewhat more attractive even than it had been before.
You know, it's funny. My whole life has been much easier because I think the pressure that I was under for those 11 months with a rifle company of 250 men was more pressure than I've been through my entire life since then. And people ask me about the pressure of being a judge, and there is a lot of pressure of being a judge. But there's also a lot of pressure in deciding which of your squad leaders you're going to send out on a night patrol.
I noticed that you're wearing a lapel pin.
Yes, I always wear the globe and anchor.
That indicates that you are a Marine.
Yes.
Marines are never former Marines. They're always Marines.
They're Marines.
We're talking about the 40-year judicial career of my guest, Judge Fred L. Fox II. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. When did you get out of the service?
After I was wounded in January of 1969, and I spent some time on a hospital ship. I spent some time in a Navy hospital in Da Nang in Vietnam. I spent about a month on Guam at a Navy hospital, and then I spent 10 months in Portsmouth Navy Hospital, which is in Portsmouth, Virginia. And back then, if you were wounded and had a disability, and my disability was 30%, you had no choice you couldn't stay in. I would have stayed in had I had the chance, because I was in infantry, and I had a JAG MOS.
JAG MOS, what does that mean?
That means it's your job. MOS is your military occupational specialty. And I had a JAG MOS, and I had 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart. And there weren't very many JAG officers that had Bronze Stars and Purple Hearts. So my future in the Marine Corps was good. But if you had a disability back then, you could not stay in. Now you can.
The rule then was that a Marine had to be available for service as a combat Marine anywhere, anytime.
Yes, yes.
So you could have been a lawyer or a military judge of some sort.
Right.
And if the Marines decided there was another war to go to, you had to be ready to go to it.
Right.
But not with the disability.
But not with the disability, right.
I suppose people would wonder, how are you now?
I'm doing well. The Marine Corps has, or the Navy, I should say, because they were Navy doctors. The doctors told me, and I remember this pretty vividly, the night I was wounded on a hospital ship, the doctors, who looked a lot like the doctors in MASH, they had blood on them and all of that kind of stuff. 2 doctors came out and said, "We don't think we can save your left leg, but we're going to try." And I remember, one, I'd had a shot of morphine, and I'm not sure that I really understood the nature of what they were telling me. But I do remember telling them, I don't want to lose a leg. And they said, well, I remember he said, "Son, I'll do the best I can." And he did a remarkable job. I ended up playing tennis, playing basketball, doing all the things I could do before, except skiing. And they told me that I could do everything I wanted to do. When I was released from the hospital, I could do anything I wanted to do except ski. And I could not ski. And I said, "Why skiing?" And they said, "Well, your leg was broken in 8 places, and with skiing, the kind of torque you put on your leg, you could break it in 8 places again." And I decided that I would give up skiing.
So you left the Marine Corps.
left the Marine Corps, came back to the same law firm in Fairmont, and started practicing law.
When did you decide that you wanted to become a judge?
It sort of was decided for me. Judge Neely was the criminal court judge in Marion County when I came to practice law. Judge Neely had a heart attack and died, actually here in Morgantown. At that time, Governor Moore appointed A. Blake Billingsley, who was a Republican lawyer, as the judge. And by that time, it was too late to run for the primary. And so the Democratic Executive Committee had to put somebody on the ticket. And back in those days, now bearing in mind this is 40-some years ago, the Democratic Executive Committee went to Judge J. Harper Meredith, who was a judge for 39 years, and basically said, who do you want on the ticket? And he called me. I was in the law firm, and he called me on the phone and said, he called early in the morning, like at 8 o'clock, said, young man, could you come over here? And of course, when Judge Meredith asked you if you could come over, you went over immediately. I said, yes, sir. And he said, I want you to run for judge. And I was totally shocked. Hadn't even thought of it. Hadn't even given it a thought. But I said, that's what you want, Judge? That's what I'll do. And I ran against the incumbent and was fortunate enough to win.
We're talking about the 40-year judicial career of my guest, Judge Fred L. Fox II. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. So you ran, you won. Then what happened?
Well, the first thing I did was I called Judge Maxwell, the federal judge in Elkins.
Robert Maxwell.
Robert Maxwell, who in all of my career, with the exception of Judge Meredith, had always treated me better than most judges had treated lawyers. And I always liked the way he treated lawyers. And I knew that I could call him and say, I'm in trouble, what do I do now? And that's basically what I did. I called Judge Maxwell. I said, I've been elected judge. I have no forms. I have nothing to work from. And he said, I'll take care of that. And within a couple of days, I got probably 1,000 pages of material from Judge Maxwell, which covered everything from how to conduct a grand jury to how to take a guilty plea to how to rule on objections and so forth. And I frequently called him since he was a federal judge and I was a state judge, and that was okay. I would frequently call him when I had a problem, and he was always there.
I had occasion to talk to another judge who will remain nameless at this point. Sometime after that person had become a judge, he'd been a judge for about 2 years, and I asked, are you over the, I have no idea what I'm doing, I need to call somebody, but I'm embarrassed to call somebody stage yet? So you went through that. I
went through that.
How long does that last?
It didn't last very long with me because I'd only been out of law school for just about 4 years. So I didn't know a lot about a lot of the law, and I realized that, and that's why I called Judge Maxwell, because I realized I need help. And at that time, the Judicial Association was not a close-run organization. Now we have, for new judges, we put on seminars, and when judges are elected or appointed, we take them to, and I say we, the Judicial Association takes them to Charleston for a week and does nothing but have circuit judges come in and tell them how to do things. But back when I was there was nobody was going to tell me how to do anything. And basically, Judge Maxwell was my savior. There's
always somebody looking over your shoulder when you're a judge.
I think you're right.
There's a tendency to think that a judge is in command, in charge, and can just do anything he or she wants to do. It's not exactly like that.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
Who looks over your shoulder? Besides everybody.
All the lawyers, the lawyers to begin with. And it's important to make the right, to get off on the right foot with the lawyers. I've always felt like that was important, and I've always felt like I had a good relationship with members of the bar and lawyers who practiced before me. I practiced before judges, and there are judges, not as many as there used to be, but there's still some judges who treat lawyers badly, treat everybody badly, and I've just always tried to avoid that.
Tell us about your first trial.
My first trial was a murder trial, if you can believe that. Before I went to Vietnam, even though I was going over there in the infantry, the Marine Corps, in its infinite wisdom, sent me to Naval Justice School, which was in Newport, Rhode Island. It was a 8 weeks course. And I went to Naval Justice School. Now, by that time, I'd been practicing law for a year and a half, 2 years, about a year and a half. And my evidence teacher was Navy Lieutenant Frank Cleckley, who had just returned from Vietnam. And Frank was from Huntington, as you know, and he introduced himself to me the first day of class. And he taught evidence in Naval Justice School. Ross Maruca, who's no longer with us, Maruca taught me evidence in law school.
You went to law school
at WVU, at the College of Law. And Ross Maruca was my evidence teacher in law school. In that trial, the prosecuting attorneys, the victim was related to the prosecuting attorney, so Ross Maruca was appointed special prosecuting attorney in that case. And Frank Cleckley was hired to represent the defendant in that case.
We need to pause for a moment and identify who Frank Cleckley is. Within the law in West Virginia, Frank Cleckley is legend. He came to West Virginia University to teach law, has taught there for years and years, but along the way he also was appointed to fill a vacancy on the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals, and he served there for a number of years and then came back and even to this moment is teaching at the College of Law.
Yes.
So you were looking at two people standing in front of you who had taught you what you needed to know to be sitting where you were.
Exactly. And they were opposing each other. And the trial took 4 days, and in 4 days there were probably not more than 5 total objections. The trial just went as smooth as any trial I've ever been in. Because 1, they both liked each other. 2, they both respected each other. And 3, they were both experts in the field of evidence. And so there were no objections or trying to get under the other lawyer's skin. They just tried this case. And I can remember finishing the case and thinking to myself, if I can try a murder case and it's that easy, I'm not going to have any trouble at all. Well, I was soon disabused of that theory when I got to my next trial, or whichever trial down the road, where I had 2 lawyers who didn't like each other, and then it's impossible.
We'll resume this conversation next week. We bring Judge Fox back to talk more about the more mature senior years of being a judge and what the reflections are on all that. Thank you for being with us. On behalf of the Law Works, I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening. If you have a legal problem and want to know if you need a lawyer, you can discuss your problem with a lawyer by calling 1-800-642-3617 Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. That's 1-800-642-3617. On the LawWorks webpage at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks program topics and additional information about this show's topic. If you would like to recommend this program to a friend, you'll find a video of the program at the LawWorks website. You'll also find free video and podcasts of previous programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future program, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a free copy of this show for classroom use, send us an email to thelawworks@comcast.net.
The Law Works is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.